Good evening. Welcome to the March 2nd, 2021 regular meeting of the Windham Southeast School District Board. The meeting has been properly warned. Calling us to order at 6:01 p.m. There are not really any changes to the agenda tonight, but I have been asked to keep the meeting brief so that our staff can get a good night's sleep. School starts again tomorrow, and even though we had a vacation week, a bunch of moving targets have been added to the process, so there'll be no let up in the demands that they'll be facing once again tomorrow. So out of respect for that need, I'm going to ask that we put off the Committee and Leadership Council reports until the 16th, and we'll have a monthly review of those. And we move directly into the consent agenda. And then I think Peter is being admitted. Andy and Frank may have some brief comments about I'm not sure what, because we haven't been in school, but then we'll move directly to the business of the meeting today, which is to consider funding options for the Academy construction project. And I've asked Frank to prepare a little background on the use of reserve funds. It's come up a few times in passing, but I think it's useful for the board to understand the statute and what the limits are and how we get to decide what to spend those on. So without further delay, I would ask for a motion to approve the consent agenda, the minutes of February 16th and February 23rd. We're going to leave the February 19th aside. Wendy had a question about that neither Andy or I had a chance to address. So we'll leave those until the next meeting. So it would be approval. I would ask for a motion to approve the minutes of February 16th and February 23rd, 2021, the warrants of February 1st, February 8th, February 15th, and February 22nd, and payrolls for January 29th and February 12th, all of 2021. So could I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
So moved.
Thank you, Thomas. Second?
Second.
Sean, I'm not hearing,
Sean.
I'm not hearing people. That's not good. Moved and seconded to any discussion of consent agenda, please. Please use the hand raising feature. I'm not seeing or hearing any, so all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Thank you. Any nays? Hearing none, the consent agenda is approved. Andy, we had you down a week ago for an update on the ongoing expansion and in-person instruction, but I'm not sure. Is there anything you wanted to share before we start again on Wednesday?
Well, we got some big news today. The announcement that K-12 teachers will be vaccinated with more news coming out Friday. So that is tremendous to hear. Sounds like it will be the Johnson & Johnson vaccine from what we've been told, but what a great piece of information to hear. We were thrilled to hear it. We do expect, like I said, more information to come out by Friday related to that vaccine. There are some conversations around what does this mean for the remainder of the school year, and we're in that wait and see mode to see what will change in terms of requirements, around that. But right now, we are just thrilled to start hearing what this news is for our teaching staff. It's just fantastic news. We do have a couple retirement. We have a retirement, a few resignations, and a posting. If I could share those too, and I'll try to go through those quickly. We have a retirement with after serving Putney for nearly 25 years. Henny Walsh has decided to retire. So I put forward Henny's name for retirement with congratulations and regret. So I'm not sure if we can have approval on that.
Should we do them all at once, Andy?
Sure. Kylie Weld has submitted. Kylie is a first grade teacher at Oak Grove. She has submitted her resignation from Oak Grove School. And Kylie is thrilled with everything she's learned this year at her time in Oak Grove and is appreciative for all the work that she's done, and will be leaving the area. And Kate Haggerty has both submitted a request to be released from her contract as a part-time or 0.6 library media specialist at Oak Grove. And we have a request to hire her as a Spanish teacher at the high school. Both those positions are for this year.
So that's something that's going to change now.
Yeah.
Okay, well, so we'll do those separately. Yep.
Okay.
Great. Okay, could I have a motion, please, to accept with gratitude and regret the retirements of Henny Walsh and Kaylee Weld?
Kylie's a resignation, not a
Kylie
retirement.
is a resignation. Okay.
So moved.
Thank you, Michelle. Second?
Second.
Thank you, Liz. Moved and seconded to accept the resignations as presented. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you. And now we want to motion to approve a 0.6 FTE contract release for Kate Haggerty and to hire her as a Spanish teacher at BUHS. I have a motion to that effect, please.
So moved, Jackie.
Thank you, Jackie. Second?
I'll second it.
Thanks, Michelle. Moved and seconded to accept the contract release and hire Kate Haggerty at the high school to teach Spanish. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Any
Aye.
opposed? Thank you. The ayes have it. Thanks, Andy. And the fiscal report, Frank, we wanted to find out if there's any additional information about the ESSER relief or the CRF, the COVID relief grant opportunities. Any change? I think the application is due on March 20th. Any new information in that area?
That's right. And if I'm able to share screen, I can give you a quick update.
Yep.
If you'd rather just a verbal, that's fine.
No, I could. I just need to click the button and there you go.
Okay. So here's where we're at. Just a glance at what we've been informed of as being available and to the extent we are pursuing it. So this top line is the CRF CARES Relief Fund for the school district. This was the one that is supposed to wrap up December 30th. So we did receive $1,086,000. We still have a few orders that we're hoping we can get qualified. There was shipping delays for some product. So we hope to have a little more out of this $1,086,000 grant. We've already wrapped up and really are receiving a great benefit for the HVAC funding that we received. We're hoping that there is a recommitment by the legislature to utilize unused CRF money for another round, because we are ready to roll with some additional improvements if the legislature makes that available. And then here's the ESSER grant, another $1,086,000 that is got a grant period that goes through September of 2022. So we have an initial series of encumbrances against that grant as of today. Much of this is related to additional PPE and some technology, but there is also some coordination, of course, continuation of COVID coordination through our nurse services. And Paul and Andy are working with the leadership team to address the balance of that and get that into a grant application within, well, we're hoping for next Tuesday. In general, that will largely follow the Agency of Ed's guidance that came recently on the education recovery strategies as it relates to focusing on various student areas that need to be addressed as a result of the pandemic. So, student support services. So that will be defined in the next few days. Nancy Weiss at the Career Center has also received approval for $198,000 in the GEAR funding. And that's primarily to support curriculum, additional curriculum, improving curriculum. Also, there's a fairly significant amount of funding for more outreach to help the general region understand the great programs that we have at the Career Center. There's also I think a minivan in this $198,000 that's been approved for supporting the job placement and various programs for kids. So there's our overview at this point. This has taken a tremendous effort, from the whole organization, principal, teachers, and central office to facilitate this. But we're very, very pleased, very grateful that Congress and the state agencies have made this available to us. We're making great use of it.
Great, thank you. That's terrific. Shall we move right into the new business, the Academy renovation, Frank? I assume you have something, well, you can still share the screen, but you don't have to unmute.
Okay, very good. Sure, I'm ready to jump right in. So here we go. I thought maybe a quick revisit of just a couple of timelines, and then set up the discussion for action items that are going to be in series over the next several board meetings. So here's I just had a review with Corey today from Stephen Associates about essentially next deliverables, next events, and where we need board input. So a quick overview, and then we'll also get, of course, to the question of fund balance and reserves and so on. But for tonight, I wanted to just revisit the timeline, and then also be sure that the board is aware it's also time to move forward with the civil engineering services that needs to work concurrently with the design work, which we talked about at the January 19 board meeting. So back in September of 19 is when the feasibility study was completed. We had a lot of stuff going on, as you know, in our first few months as a new Southeast school district. So we didn't actually get to discuss this on the new SD board's agenda until February. And essentially in that meeting is where the board heard the overview from Stevens and Associates, the resources that we have available to address the project, meet the needs of the students. And then the board raised in that meeting, February 5th, 2020, this goal of having a sustainability sort of agreed upon, consensus moving forward. So from there, a couple of months later, April 15th, the board adopted those sustainability goals. So those, you have those readily available in your board minutes. And then from there, unfortunately, we all know the pandemic really turned us upside down, and there was quite a delay between April and December when we essentially really rolled up the sleeves and engaged consultants and contractors to get work done. Fortunately, we're ready to roll. So just most recently, December, there was a workshop as a result of the board request for identifying sustainability goals in this project. A workshop engaged lighting consultant and an energy consultant specialist, along with Stevens and Associates. That was Nadev, facilitated with Building Green. And let's see, Thomas Nolan participated. And the objective there, as it is for the next two workshops, which are hopefully in mid and then late March. But the goal is to reach consensus on what we could consider a final schematic, which means we're basically assuring that we are telling the architect where the addition is going, and then the major components of the building in terms of the infrastructure that goes into the building, the systems, the HVAC, the lighting issues. So it's not super prescriptive around building materials, but it's certainly we need a consensus as a result of the next two workshops with the board representative input that gives the Stevens and Associates a very clear idea of what they're designing for bid. So wanted to make sure we understood that. So here we are, March 3rd, assuming tomorrow that there is no substantial change in our organizational structure, who we are and who we're prepared to do business with. I will formally implement contract that the board approved on January 19th. That was that $200,000 multi-service project management, design, and the energy consulting, facilitation of the workshops, all of those things that the board has asked for, and that also are, of course, customary to the project. So that kind of brings us up today. And now the future events that need to be on the board's agenda, assuming the major milestones are met. And this would be between now and late August in order to get us at a place where we can start construction. So here we go. The first issue is, and we don't need to do this tonight, it's just to be prepared to do this, maybe at your next board meeting. It would be to decide on the form of funding for this project, which I'm ready to discuss with you. But it's to decide on a form, and if it's a form that involves any sort of indebtedness, then we need a public meeting. So I've reached out to the various folks that help write articles for indebtedness that comply with all the Vermont state statutes. So I have a proposed article here, but sticking to concepts here. So next meeting, we would need to have decided whether or not we're going to do a bond vote, a municipal loan, or some sort of an internal option. So those are three forms of funding. We have to decide on that, and then whichever one we do, if it involves indebtedness, we need to set the date of a public meeting to authorize the board to borrow. So that's our next board meeting. Right behind that is the completion of those workshops that we've had one, and when we signed up the energy consultants, it was for 3 workshops, and they're prepared to schedule those in the remaining days of March. And so the next event is to take that input and essentially have on April 6th, the board say, yes, we have these meet our goals, our sustainability goals. Yep, go ahead and start the final design, or nope, it doesn't, and we need you to reconsider this or that. So that event should occur on April 6th board meeting. And then the following meeting would be the one where the board sets out the bidder pre-qualification process. And that's all subject to a state law. And it's at a minimum of 60-day process. But it's important that it's all about the board's actions to facilitate the process. Concurrently, with all of this that we're talking about, the design development would be underway. The final version of design development cannot start until the board says, yes, we thanks for facilitating the feedback relative to the board goals that were requested back in April. And either yes, we think this project meets those goals, or no, we need more work. Design development can't start until that occurs, and they're saying 10 to 12 weeks for design development. So, and which would include construction documents, not only the bid documents, but the specifications for the builder to use when the bid is awarded. So following that concept, if we initiate a bidder pre-qualification process in the second meeting in April, we understand that Stevens Associates is in full swing with the design development, and of course we have to interview the interested bidders within 30 days, or typically but make a decision on who we are selecting as our pre-qualified bidders sometime in May. I've got a proposed, tentative public meeting in May as well to have the electorate vote on funding, if that is the choice that the board elects, and I know that, that's just hypothetical at this point until we have this conversation. So the board would need to warn a meeting and then actually conduct the meeting, get the results. If that occurred and the voters approved borrowing, authorize the board to borrow funds, that would align up very nicely with being prepared to make a bid award to one of the pre-qualified contractors. And that could occur in June. And then the remainder close out the bid process, hopefully late July, early August, and award the bid in September and start construction in the fall. So this is pretty conventional, planning timeline in the way in which a board needs to engage in a legal process to facilitate a school renovation addition project. So I think now it's time to come back to the real one of the first questions, which is how are we going to fund it? And I'm happy to give you the kind of the three scenarios, a little bit more in detail on the three scenarios. But before I do, are there any questions, suggestions?
Before I take questions, just a couple of clarifications, please, Frank. The language that you have there, we'll be considering that on the 16th and not tonight, correct?
That's right. It would be helpful if the board decided what form of financing that we take, but even that could be made. That decision could be made at the next meeting.
Okay, and the workshops, the two more workshops, will they happen before? First, will we be getting information on the design on the 16th as well, or will that all come on April 6th?
Yeah, the idea is that the workshops will inform the revised schematic design. So it would, the workshops are, there might be one before the March 16, but I'm sure there won't be two workshops
Okay,
before that.
great.
So
Great.
yes,
Yeah,
it gets
thank
us to April 6th. Yeah.
Great, thank you. Okay, questions from the board for Frank on the information or the calendar or any other aspects of this? Sean?
Yeah, I was just wondering, thank you very much for this detailed account of the timeline going forward. I was a little surprised that the construction won't actually start until the fall. Initially, I thought that we were going to be able to get started a little earlier. I wonder if you could.
Yeah, I really pressed I pressed Stevens and Associates on that because I had the same reaction. Their answer is, well, we really had this discussion queued up for, it was, I think, maybe late November of 2020, and the Stevens and Associates, the commitment to formally move forward with with all of these services that we've just talked about, design, project oversight, coordination of energy consultants, review of the board's sustainability goals, and then facilitating these workshops. Essentially, because we didn't have them on the agenda in December or that first meeting in January, we were very much focused on the budget development. Essentially, that's the reason why they didn't move forward until January 19, when the board had it on the agenda to say, yep, yeah, we're committing to this service. So that's why we are not, as we had considered, I think, back in the fall, hopefully a July construction. It's essentially we can't shorten up all of those events that I just discussed. And if we were going to hit a July start date, we would have needed to really wrap this up in December. But we wrapped it up in January. So it's just too many things coming at us.
Emily?
I know, Frank, that some of the workshops obviously are finalizing the design, but do we have an estimate for how long construction will take generally?
Yeah, they were thinking 6 months. And knowing that a fair amount of work can happen in the fall, before the ground freezes, and then there would be a delay in part of the winter months, but not doesn't shut the project down for certainly.
And is there an expectation that it will disrupt any of the spaces that are currently being used by students?
That was a big part of starting as early as they could, so that much of the interior work for renovation could be done when school's not in session. It will change the timeline on when they get to the window renovation. That is part of this project, as well as the special education wing renovation. I think there has to be some interruption for activity in the areas adjacent, but there's no indication that it's going to interfere with the ability to function. And Kelly, I know you've had a number of meetings with Corey and Diane Abate. Do you have any other insight on that?
Kelly?
I don't. I was hoping to see something happen over the summer as well, especially maybe, like the window replacement logically could happen during the summertime because it's a smaller thing. But I know as you're talking, I'm thinking about this too, because right now our music teacher is working remotely. So we have the music room set up into 3 different spaces where special ed is occurring. And then our enrichment teacher is teaching a homeroom. So her room's being used by 2 other teachers for special ed purposes. So, and then the resource room, which is scheduled to be renovated, is being used by 3 different staff. So everyone's scattered for now because of COVID. But once we resume, music class, I don't really know where everybody's going to go. Hopefully we'll be able to continue to use the White House while this is happening. And, we'll just have to be really flexible, as we've learned this year how to be, in terms of where staff lands, but we won't be able to pull the same amount of small groups that we typically do.
So these are topics that are also going to be part of those 2 workshops. They're definitely sort of the planning process to get to a schematic design. And what we're talking about is the construction management piece of it, and so that's definitely down the road. But Kelly, you'll make it clear what is acceptable and not acceptable, and of course that will drive the construction schedule, and to some extent has cost implications. But so we'll work those out over those next few meetings.
Frank, has there been any consideration, given that conversation, any consideration of separating the projects out and trying to get a bid for the windows sooner, where there's not so much a design issue and a engineering issue as there is a contractor to do the work? Or does it all have to stay under one contract?
It has been discussed, and I think that's again part of the next couple of meetings. And typically, we're much better off with mobilizing a contractor for multiple purposes, as opposed to mobilizing separate contractors that will all bill us for that mobilization cost. That's a big part of any project. So generally, we're going to be better off financially if we can keep it as one contract, one bid process, and one hopefully funding event. But we'll make sure we raise that question and understand the implications for this later schedule.
Great, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions? Sean?
I'll just make this brief. As a builder for so many years, I know that building during the wintertime has its drawbacks. So I would concur with David's idea of maybe, and Kelly, I mentioned it also, maybe moving ahead if we could, but that would depend on totally on the authorization and the enthusiasm that you received, Frank, from the Stevens. So.
Yep. So we'll be sure that that's on the top priority in our next meeting. And that's where I would hope Jackie and Thomas could be sure to join, because the main purpose of those meetings are to get the board input, as it relates to those goals that were developed and approved by the board. It's just really, really important. For some folks deal with construction projects and others don't, but from the process point of view, schematic design is that basic outline. It's the basic, where are we doing this facility addition, and what are the major system components, and then after that's defined, and in our case, it would be the school board making that determination. Then there's a whole different level of experience and expertise that's brought to the final design component. And so the question that we're just talking about right now, are the windows in this thing or not? We got to know. We got to have a decision on that. Otherwise, we can't release construction documents with any kind of ambiguity in them, or else it'll cost us a lot in change orders. So what I have here on the screen and what we are discussing is it's a much simpler way to engage the public under VSA Title 24, Section 1786A. If you go to that article, or I'm sorry, that statute, it essentially enables the school board to warn a meeting of the electorate and then conduct that meeting as you would any of your annual or special meetings, which means that conventional warning 30 days prior and a public information hearing within 10 days of the meeting. So it's a very simple format as opposed to the bond format. The bond format is just more onerous. You have to have a series of published warnings. I think it's over a 5-week period. There's a lot more sort of a interface with the Vermont Bond Bank and a lot of application process that needs to occur. I would be recommending a bond format if this was a $5 million project, but a $2 million project where we already have a fairly significant amount of reserves, and I am optimistic that we will be able to qualify for some support out of this future ESSER money, this CARES Act money. So after talking with bankers and the Vermont Bond Bank and Paul Giuliani, who's the bond counsel and bond indebtedness expert in the state for the last 40 years. Paul he's a treasure. Giuliani. Here's essentially, if we go to Title 24/1786, it basically says this is the form of the article that you could present to the voters, and it's a yes or no article. And if you had that special meeting sometime in May, it could read just exactly this, and we could discuss the number, the 2 million. But it's basically an article that the electorate is authorizing the school board to borrow money for a term of 5 years or less. So there you have it. That is my recommendation, and a couple of key points here is that you have a up to or not to exceed, and then the 2 million, and then you have to subject to reduction from available reserves. So or state aid and federal grants. And this is almost exactly what we did in the Green Street project, the biofuel project. We were very fortunate between myself and Jody Nutting and others in the central office. We pursued a USDA grant. We also pursued a Efficiency Vermont grant, and we also pursued a Windham Wood Heat grant. And we got a substantial number of grants that reduced that cost. I think that was nearly $1 million project. But we had an article just like this, and we ended up borrowing far less. It's almost, as I recall, we may not have borrowed anything in the end, as I recall. But if we don't have an article now or on March 16, there would be uncertainty as to whether or not we have the funding to move ahead or a plan to move ahead. So that's why my recommendation is that the board consider this, and then at the next meeting make that decision as to which form of borrowing do we want to move forward with, you know, and then the third option, I've mentioned this one that I'm recommending. I've mentioned the bond. The third option is to attempt to fund it internally. And I don't see that as a viable option as of today without consequences. And the consequences are that it will put a fairly significant amount of pressure if we liquidate the 1.6 million in capital fund reserves for this academy project. It will put pressure on future budgets as we have the other approximately $1 million a year in capital improvements coming up, because it would force us to either increase the appropriation out of the general fund to pay for those projects, which you know is going to increase cost per student, and it kind of generally spikes the tax rate, or it pushes us into doing the same thing that this scenario does for us, which is we need to go borrow for future projects. And my thinking is, why not address the funding issue now and enable us to move forward with all of these pieces that are contingent upon you know, the board authorizing the project to move forward. I guess one last thing is, of course, it is possible that the community will vote the article down. And if that happened, then we would be in a situation where we'd have to, again, reevaluate how are we going to meet those student needs? How are we going to resolve the issues that we've got very well documented over, you know, the last 3 years? So obviously we hope that doesn't happen, but this strategy allows us to engage Stevens Associates, start a pre-qualification project, inform the public and engage the public on getting this project on track for certainly the fiscal year 23, hopefully part of fiscal year 22 as well.
Great. Thank you, Frank. Just another clarification. The method, the language here, and this method doesn't commit us to borrowing $2 million. It says up to, and it allows for all the other contingencies. It allows time for them to unfold if there are grants, if there is ESSER money, if we want to use some of what the 200,000 that's already set aside in our capital plan for this project, we can do that or not. So I'm trying to see it. I don't see any drawback, and I expected, I'm not suggesting we do this, but I had thought that we would be voting on this week. I had understood there was great urgency and that we needed to approve this week, and you know, unless other board members, well, I'm happy to wait another week, just so, you know, or 2 weeks, so people have time to think, but it seems like pretty obvious path forward. So other members, questions or comments? Sean?
Yeah, my comment is sort of follows what you just said, David, and it sort of seems to me that this is an extremely well laid out timeline for something that we've been talking about for about 3 years. And so I would like to make a motion that we take the timeline document presented to us tonight and proceed as is most prudent to bring this project to fruition.
Jackie, second that.
Is there, I'm not sure the word prudent is definitive enough to, I mean, that sort of implies that we wouldn't be prudent if we didn't. And can you clarify that a little bit, Sean?
Yeah, yes, because it sort of seemed to me that Frank was asking that we approve this on the 16th. But it also is pretty clear to me that if there's some approval that goes to the financial office, to move ahead with a timeline that is laid out in this document. And the vote, you know, if all the directors voted for this, if the board passed this, then it would sort of remove some contingency about moving ahead. I just feel like we really have to do it, and we might as well move forward with a, and that's why I used the word, what was the word I used? Tentative?
Yeah, prudent.
Conditional approval?
If I could make a suggestion is instead of using the word
Please.
prudent, maybe as recommended, because you are referring to this document. That, you know, that would very much help the administration in engaging the, you know, various parties that we need to get this moving.
Well, we have a motion that's been moved and seconded, and Wendy's hand is up, which I think means that she needs help with understanding. Well, I'll let her speak for herself. Wendy?
Mr. Chair, you read my mind. Thank you. I want to read this to see if it, because I'm trying to scribble notes as folks are talking, and I'm going to read this, and then, if Sean wants to say, oh yeah, that sounds right. And then if not, I'll adjust. Okay, so the motion is that the board proceeds with the timeline for the Academy project as recommended.
Is that, Jackie, is that what you intended to second?
It is.
I think that you got it exactly, Wendy.
Excellent.
Sean, I think you agree.
Could I make a
Sure.
suggestion? So I like everything that Wendy had. And Sean, I think that you included or implied, if I could have you make it clear that, and the method of financing. So timeline and method of financing. That will let me know. I can call some banks and I can get a process in play, and Barb can talk to town clerks to start saying what would be a good date.
Okay, so just to clarify, Frank, and thank you for indulging me. So I'm going to read it again with what Frank suggested, and let me know if this works. The motion is that the board proceeds with the timeline and the method of financing for the Academy project as recommended.
Sean, is that your motion?
Yes, it is.
Thank you. And Jackie, is that what you seconded, or is that your motion?
Yep. Yes.
Okay, we have a motion moved and seconded, and as Wendy just articulated, any comments, questions, or anything else on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please indicate by unmuting and saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion passes. Thank you. So that, I believe, concludes our business for tonight. As I said earlier, I was asked by administration to make this meeting as brief as possible so that the administrators can get a good night's sleep and be ready for whatever comes tomorrow. It's a remote day, but I don't think that's any less stressful for them or anybody for that matter. So we do have public comment and non-agenda items. If there are any comments, I want to remind people these are non-agenda items. It's comment. You won't necessarily get a response. And I would like to ask people to limit their time to 2 minutes. So is there any public comment? Well, Frank's hand is up. So go ahead, Frank.
Okay, thank you. I did want to make sure that the board understood that both the workshops that I mentioned, that Nadev Malin will be informing you, David, I'm sure, of when they're scheduled, get an invitation. they're all part of refining, as I was saying, schematic design, but also I do need to engage the civil engineering services of Stevens and Associates that was also outlined. Those services were estimated. Now, this is for the entire project, going from where we are right now through actual construction oversight. 34,800 was the contract that has been proposed, and it's we could procure that from a separate entity, but we're so much better off when we are able to procure all of these services through one entity, because then we don't have to coordinate the various services. So I just wanted to say that I'm intending to move forward with that, make sure that the board understood that and had no concerns about it.
Thank you. That's in the record now. So that's excellent. Thanks. Ruby McAdoo?
Hi, Ruby McAdoo, Putney Central School Leadership Council. So I guess I missed the first few minutes of this meeting, so I wasn't aware that it was shortened. And I am wondering if you can speak to, I know the board was going to focus at one point on leadership council development, and I'm getting a little bit antsy because I feel like we've been the most engaged we've been in a while, but I don't feel very engaged with this board because you've been so busy that we haven't had any voice because of adjusted meetings. So could someone speak to the idea? I know it was a communications council idea to have a summit or what's the plan with focusing on leadership council development?
It's on our agenda for the 16th, and we're going to try to address that broadly and specifically in terms of development.
Great, thank you.
Thanks, Ruby. Seeing no others. Oh, wait, Bethany.
Hi, Bethany Ranquist, Brattleboro. I just wanted to put out there, I know this has been mentioned a couple of times, and I'm going to continue, and I'm sure others will continue to put out there that the school board meetings that are taking place are happening on the same night as town select board meetings, which is an issue as far as people being able to attend both at the same time. Tonight, there's a community safety review happening, a conversation happening at the select board meeting, and people are having to choose between whether to be involved in school board decision and policies or the town stuff. And there's important stuff happening at both sets of meetings. So I'm gonna respectfully ask that when the new school board begins, now that we've all voted, that be one of the very first topics to look at a change of timing, because it's not fair to the public to not be able to attend both sets of very important meetings in our town. So I would just respectfully ask that be one of the very first conversations and topics that gets discussed when the new school board starts up, so that we can all be involved in both the select board and the school board meetings, because none of us can be in two places at the same time. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no other. Ann?
I believe Sean just raised his hand, Dave.
Oh, okay, Sean?
I just wanted to comment on what Bethany just said. I raised that issue when it was we first talked about, and I've heard from people that work as news reporters that it's an imposition on them not to be able to have access to two meetings on the same night. It's just difficult, and community members also. So I don't live in Brattleboro, so it's, it doesn't really include me that much, but I know people I've talked to are very.
Thank you. Other comments? Hearing none, could I have a motion to adjourn, please?
Mr. Chair, there being no further business before this board, I move that we adjourn.
Is there a second?
A second.
Thank you, Michelle. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, we are adjourned at